You buckle your toddler into a car seat, hand her to a woman you've met twice, and drive off to spend 8 hours away from your own child. Somewhere else, a grandparent waves through a 5-inch screen on a video call 3 time zones away. For most of the roughly 300,000 years Homo sapiens has existed on this planet, neither of those scenes would have made any sense at all. Not because babysitters or video calls are clever modern inventions nobody thought of sooner. Because for most of human history, there was no single set of parents raising a child alone in the first place. So how did ancient humans raise children with no manuals, no schedules, and often no isolated nuclear family unit, and somehow get it right for 250,000 years? In 1980, anthropologists Melvin Connor and Carol Worthman published a study in the journal Science after years spent living among the Kungsan of the Kalahari Desert in what is now Botswana. They measured something parenting books still argue about today: how often should a baby actually be fed? Their number, an average nursing interval of just over 13 minutes, repeated across the entire day, for years, not 3-hour windows, not ounces measured in a bottle. 13 minutes, the infant carried the whole time in a sling against the mother's hip. Compare that to a modern feeding schedule built around sleep training charts and app reminders. The Kung infant was simply never far enough from milk to need one. So was constant contact just a Kung thing? One culture, one desert? Not even close. In 1987, psychologist Edward Tronick, together with Gilda Morelli and Steve Wynn, published fieldwork from the Ituri Forest, then northeastern Zaire, today's Democratic Republic of Congo, among the Efa people. They tracked exactly who was holding, feeding, and touching each infant, hour by hour, day after day. By 6 weeks old, they found, an FA baby already spent more time with someone other than its biological mother than with her. Over half of every infant's social contact belonged to aunts, older children, and unrelated women moving through camp. This wasn't neglect. It was the opposite of neglect. A crying baby was everyone's responsibility immediately. By default, there was no daycare drop-off, because the entire camp already functioned as one. Everyone assumes this kind of round-the-clock closeness must have meant one exhausted mother, glued to her infant, with nobody else stepping in to help. The data says the reverse. The more constant the contact, the less of it belonged to any single person. In 1991, anthropologist Barry Hewlett published Intimate Fathers, based on fieldwork among the AKA of the Congo Basin, in what's now the Central African Republic and the Republic of Congo. He measured something almost no researcher had bothered measuring before: how much of the day fathers spent near their infants. The figure, aka fathers stayed within arm's reach of their babies 47% of daylight hours, actually holding or carrying them for 22% of that time. It remains one of the highest levels of direct paternal infant care ever documented in any human society, foraging or industrial. The hands-off dad, standing at a comfortable distance from childcare, that's not the ancient pattern, that's the recent one. Here's where it gets strange, though, because none of this explains why humans, alone among the great apes, can even afford to raise children this way. A human mother can have another baby roughly every 3 years. A chimpanzee mother, our closest living relative, needs 4 to 5 because she raises each infant almost entirely alone, with almost no outside help. In 1998, anthropologist Kristen Hawkes and colleagues, building on years of fieldwork among the Hadza of Tanzania, published research in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences proposing an answer for that gap: grandmothers. Postmenopausal Hadza women, no longer nursing infants of their own, spent long hours every single day digging tubers too tough for young children to reach. Food that let mothers keep a toddler fed while nursing a newborn at the same time. Menopause itself, in other words, may function as a child care adaptation. Human females are among the only females on Earth that live for decades after they stop reproducing, and evolutionary anthropologists argue that isn't a biological accident. It's a job description. Everyone pictures the grandmother as a soft, background figure in ancient family life. Hawkes' fieldwork suggests she may have been one of the load-bearing pillars the entire arrangement depended on. And here's the part that surprises people most, given the title of this video. Anthropologist David Lancy, after reviewing child-rearing practices across dozens of traditional societies, found something close to the opposite of chaos. In many hunter-gatherer cultures, young children are rarely, or even never, scolded, let alone physically punished. No default timeouts, timeouts, no raised voice as the first tool reached for. Below a certain age, children simply weren't held to adult standards of behavior yet. They were expected to learn by watching and tagging along, not by being lectured into compliance. So what was the actual rule, if nobody ever wrote one down? It isn't that ancient parents had secretly stricter standards nobody's found yet. It's that the whole premise, one exhausted set of parents, alone in a room enforcing rules, was never the human default to begin with. 13 minutes between feedings, day and night. More than half of a baby's contact going to someone besides its mother. A father with his hands full nearly half the day. A grandmother who reorganized her entire life around a grandchild that wasn't hers, for a species that couldn't afford for her not to. That was the rulebook, not commands. Proximity, a child wasn't controlled into good behavior. She was surrounded until good behavior was simply what everyone around her already did, and she copied it. Go back to that car seat, that sitter met twice, that grandparent flattened onto a 5-inch screen. None of it is wrong. Exactly. It's just thin. A scattered, long-distance version of a system that used to run on many hands instead of two. Ancient parents didn't out-discipline modern ones, and they weren't secretly permissive either. They were simply never alone with the job in the first place. We didn't lose the rules our ancestors raised children by. We lost the room full of people who used to be standing there enforcing them without even meaning to, and quietly decided 2 tired adults could do the work an entire camp used to share. Ancient children weren't raised without rules. They were simply never left alone long enough to need any.